This podcast has bad words.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus. And together we are the Minimalists.
Welcome to episode 129. Today, we're going to talk about the details of the science.
Uh-oh, I brought the wrong notes.
Fajiji Gaga. You remember that?
Yeah, but I feel bad making fun of her.
Oh, no. I think it was all an elaborate prank on her part.
Maybe.
I think she was trying to get a lot of YouTube views, and it worked out really, really well.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if we can find that.
I thought she was like legit skits.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know,
man. But I thought it was like an elaborate prank. And anyway,
if it was. She did a great job.
We are not going to talk about the details of the science today. Today, we're going to talk about starting anew. We're going to talk about new beginnings. We're going to talk about starting over and everything that entails. Before we jump into that, Ryan, you've had an interesting week. You had your sis in town.
Yes.
She had a bit of a. It's almost like sometimes we need a kickstart to have a new beginning. It's the one thing that is interesting for me. I feel like we often put these arbitrary new beginnings. I remember back in the sales world, it was like, well, it's a new month, and now we have these new sales goals. We're starting anew, and that can be okay. I mean, it can make us feel like it's a reset, but it is arbitrary, right? And once we realize that, it becomes a bit of a really small superpower to realize, like, oh wow, like today is April 24th, and I can just reset today. I don't have to wait until May 1st or June 1st or the first of the year for the New Year's resolution. It's it's time for spring cleaning right now, so to speak. We can do that in our homes. We can also do it in our own bodies and minds as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Waking up every day and looking at it as an opportunity to reset. You know, it's funny, man. I have been, with my blood sugar being all weird, like in the mornings is where I'm the grumpiest.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I use that technique of looking at it as like a new beginning. I'm like, here's my chance to take this grumpiness that I have and not project it out of my body. And I can start practicing this every day. And you know, it's working so far. But usually, like, as soon as I get like some coffee in me, or especially bulletproof coffee in me, like, I'm totally good to go.
You're doing some carbs in the morning too, though, right?
Not really.
No.
I mean, if it's
what's been the most helpful for you? Because you've talked about this a little bit on the podcast. For those of you who don't know, Ryan found out that he was pre-diabetic, even though he had a great lifestyle, but it wasn't great enough. And so you've made some changes. What's helped the most?
Cutting out rice, potatoes, bread. I don't. Here's what I used to always do, man. I'd go to a restaurant, I'd order something, and it'd come with like delicious potatoes or bread, or they bring the bread to your table before the meal. Yeah. And instead of me saying, oh, I don't want that, take it back, because that's not how I am at restaurants. Like, it would have to be a really, really terrible meal for me to like send anything back. So I'm just like, all right, I'll leave it on the table. But then sure enough, I'm like, oh, I'll just have a bite. I'll just have 2 bites. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to stop eating all these carbs. Today is going to be my last day. And I just had a lot of those days. I did that with ice cream. I did that with bread. And I just want to say too, like, there's nothing wrong with bread, ice cream, or whatever, potatoes or rice. It's a problem for me because I'm just genetically predispositioned to not handle those carbs well, those fast burning carbs well. Yeah. So for me, like, cutting that stuff out has really helped. I'm not advocating this for all of our listeners. But it's helped me bring my levels down. But I think I talked about this on the podcast. It has helped me see, though, how sugar masks like this symptom of hanger. HANGER. Like, it totally, and alcohol is the same exact thing. So like, once I've taken those fast burning carbs out and drastically reduced my intake of alcohol, like, I just noticed, like, oh, like, there are these symptoms coming up, and it comes through, I think, with hanger. Anyway.
You know what? It's fascinating. I think we have a diet question here we'll get to, so maybe we'll pick that back up with the diet question here later in in the podcast, but I have a lot of questions and comments about that as well with respect to my own life, but questions for you that I think will help shed some light for our audience as well.
Which, by the way, I just got my blood checked, and again, and all right, so I was
for the third time in 6 months or less?
The third time in 6 months. I got my blood checked. The first time it came back at, I want to say it was like 7.1, which is diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Dr. Ryan Green was like, we need to retest you because this doesn't seem right. Because I told him what I was just telling you about, here are the exceptions I make in my diet. Here's what I do to splurge. And he was like, no, dude, like how many donuts are you eating a week?
Right. It's almost like he didn't believe you because it wasn't consistent. The blood results you had weren't consistent
with my diet,
with what you said your diet was. Now he also didn't know about the genetic history from your father and grandfather, etc.
Right. So I got retested. It came back at 6.1 or 6.4. So maybe 6.4, which was basically like on the close to being diabetic. And then I just got it back and now it's 5.7. And what I'm talking about is my hemoglobin A1c, which is just an indicator of how much sugar you've had in your body. It's an average over the last 90 days. But just from changing my diet over the last month has like taken it down another 0.4 points. So 5.7 on the hemoglobin, scale.
Mm-hmm.
I am basically, if I can get down to, so I'm at 5.7.
Yeah.
If I can get down to 5.69, so if I can get down 100th of a percent,
yeah,
then I will be considered non-diabetic. Not even like right now I'm in that range where it's like pre-diabetic, but if I can just get it one more 100th of a way,
yeah,
I will be non-diabetic.
And then it's back to the deep fried cupcakes from
That's
Ryan
right.
Nicodemus.
That's right, man. No, it's funny, man, because like when I got that number back, I really did want to go out and start splurging. Like I went out and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like do this, I'm gonna do that, and
oh wow, so that's
and then all of a sudden I was because here's the thing is like I was making exceptions like the last month and a half especially when we were on tour. I was making these exceptions with like, all right, I'm gonna have a bite of this, or I'm gonna have another glass of wine instead of just sticking to one glass of wine. And I was kind of doing that to see where my blood would be, and it turns out it has actually gone down. So yes, like all of a sudden I wanted to be like, oh, it's going down. That means I can add more to my diet. But then quickly I was able to reason with myself and be like, dude, like I've built some really good habits. It's very like I don't crave sugar as much. I don't crave the bread as much. And if I do have those cravings, don't get me wrong, but not nearly as often as when I was eating it on a more regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was able to quickly kind of turn myself around and be like, all right, dude, like don't undo everything you've done over the last few months. So
getting those test results back prompted a new beginning for you. The first time you got the test results back, because you're like, oh, I obviously some changes need to happen here, right?
Yeah, I mean, my life depended on it.
Exactly, and I think also, and I wasn't thinking about this going into the episode, but what's fascinating is you're like, I got this good news back, and now I'm going to go. At least my mindset is, well, I'm going to go celebrate now, right?
Yeah.
And so a new beginning isn't necessarily a good new beginning.
Yeah.
You can have a new beginning that's like, I can think back to my mom. She was an alcoholic, and she quit drinking a bunch of times, and honestly, when I was growing up, the times that were most terrifying for me was when she was sober.
Because you knew it was just like a matter of time?
I knew that if I'm 7 years old, I come home to the house on Warren Street, which we were just back at recently filming the new documentary there, and it's all boarded up now. But I would come home, I'd open the door, and I wouldn't know whether or not she was going to be on the couch passed out with a beer on the floor, or, a bottle of wine or something, or if she was going to be sober that day. And every single day it was like I was spinning the roulette wheel, and it just had it was going to land on black or red that day, and so there were times where it was actually more terrifying because I didn't have I had the uncertainty of, oh no, what's today going to be like? Whereas if she was on, several week-long bender, like at least I knew what to expect. I'd come home and she'd be passed out on the couch.
Right.
And so in a weird way, like sometimes the new beginnings were her like falling off the wagon again and starting to drink. That was a unfortunate new beginning. But that's not what we want to talk about today. What we want to talk about today is how do we have the good new beginnings? How do we start anew because we're in a position where we want to make some changes in our life. So
I love that, dude. So the next time I have the urge to, I don't know, eat a cake. I can't remember the last time I've eaten a whole cake. I'm sure I've done it before. But the last time I get an urge to do that, like, I've got to ask myself, like, do I want this to be my new beginning? Do I want to start a new beginning right now and start implementing this bad habit back into my life? I love that, dude. That's a really good way of looking at it.
How about we dive into some of these voicemails?
I dare us.
Our first one today, our first voicemail is from Lexi in Cincinnati.
So my husband and kids and I are planning on moving to Seattle or Portland in the next year, and we're trying to figure out which stuff would be beneficial to keep versus to sell. And I know you guys are doing a big move, so I wanted to see what your input is on this. We've been trying to get rid of everything that we have that's clutter, but, you know, the big pieces of furniture, what do we do?
All right, so I can't tell you what to do specifically, Lexi, but I can tell you what I would do if I were in your situation. First off, congratulations, you're moving. You're moving from one great city, Cincinnati, Ohio, which Ryan and I worked in for many years, and you're moving up to the Pacific Northwest, either Seattle or Portland, and two other just wonderful cities. So congratulations. But there's going to be a total change. They're completely different cities. All three of them are different. I mean, obviously Portland and Seattle are a little bit more similar than Cincinnati, but they are definitely different places. So first, on our website recently, I wrote this essay. It was very, very short, and it was called Questions to Ask Before Purchasing. And so I've got 6 questions here that I often ask myself, either directly or indirectly, before purchasing. The first question is, who am I buying this for? Or if Sean were correcting me, he would say, for whom am I buying this? Because ending a sentence with a preposition is something up with which he will not put. But he's very prescriptivist in that way. But who am I buying this for is a question. And I think when we're thinking about holding on to our stuff, we can ask that question, right? Like, who is this actually for?
Who am I holding on to this for?
Am I just trying to impress other people with this huge DVD collection? Because who is that really impressing?
I know,
right?
that's what impresses me.
You come over, you're like,
big giant DVD collections.
hey Josh, you have a huge DVD collection. So who am I buying this for? Or maybe who am I keeping this for? Is this something that
Who am I trying to impress?
Yeah, who am I trying to impress? Now, if it's truly for you, then maybe we move on to the next question. Will this add value to my life? Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, will it serve a purpose or bring you joy? Does it serve a purpose? Is it useful? Is it some sort of tool? Or is it a piece of artwork on the wall that you truly get joy from? Or is it in the way? The average American household has 300,000 items in it. Most of those things get in the way of the things that truly add value to our lives. As a minimalist, the paradox of minimalism is I get far more value from the few items I have than if I were to water them down with 300,000 other items. The third question I ask myself is, can I afford it? Now, if I have to put something on a credit card, then I can't afford it when I'm purchasing something, right? What if I don't have the space for it? Well, then I certainly can't afford it, right? Because I have to put it in a storage locker or a basement or somewhere. But can I afford it is a question. Now, maybe here's the question for you, Lexi, and for your family. Can we afford holding on to this? Or would selling that thing actually bring more money that we could do something else with, right? The fourth question that I ask myself is this the best use of this money? So before I buy something, is this the best use of this money? And so if I'm holding on to something, maybe that question is this the best use of this resource, of the time and attention necessary to take care of the thing? But also, is this the best item that, in fact, quite often we'll realize, like we have clothes is an easy example for me because I had way too many clothes when I first started simplifying. That's where I started. And I realized, like, oh, these aren't even the best clothes, meaning they're not my favorite clothes. They're not my favorite things. So maybe if I reposition that question for holding on to stuff are these my favorite things, right? The fifth thing that I ask myself is, what's the actual cost of this thing? Not just the price tag, because the price goes way beyond the price tag, right?
Yeah.
There's so many other costs. The cost of fixing the thing and taking care of the thing and putting gas in the thing and changing the thing's oil. And what about the batteries for the thing and storing the thing and worrying about the thing, thinking about the thing, protecting the thing, and then when it's all said and done, replacing the thing. What's the actual cost? It's way beyond that price tag. And the last question I asked myself, and this came from someone I was dating a few years ago. She said every time she went into like a CVS or a Macy's or something, she'd walk into a store, and before she bought, so she had an impulse to buy something. She said, "What would Josh do in this situation?" So much so that she joked she wanted to get one of those WWJD bracelets. Just so every time she went to a store, she could look at it, she would say, "What would Josh do?" Now, she didn't actually meant like, well, I look up to Josh. No, she's saying Josh had developed some mechanisms to be able to deal with the stuff in his life. And really what she was saying is, what would the best version of me do? And so that's my sixth question is, would the best version of me buy this thing?
And when you say the best version of me, you're meaning the person who's asking that question to themselves.
Yes, the best version of myself, correct. Which is grammatically incorrect, but that will get the point across. So what would the best version of Chris or Nancy, or in this case, Lexi, what would the best version of Lexi and her family do? Would the best version hold on to this? Would their future self look at them and say, why did I hold on to this? Why are you making me deal with this now? Because you know what, Lexi? Isn't that what you and your family are doing right now with your stuff? You're looking back at your past self and saying, why are you making me deal with this? You're talking to your 23-year-old self, your 25-year-old self, your 30-year-old self, and saying, why did you put me in this predicament? Well, now it's time to start anew.
Yeah, I think when I heard this question, I thought about what Mariah and I did. And we basically, first off, we went through our stuff like kind of at a surface level and just collected a bunch of things we could donate right off the bat. I was like, Mariah, I know there's at least like a box worth of donation items that we can pull from all of our stuff. Like, let's just see if we can fill this box. So that's where we started. And then as we were packing, we were filling that box even more. And I know for me and Mariah, we kind of deal with our stuff a little bit differently.
What kind of stuff were you putting in that box?
Oh, man, old USB cables, shorts I haven't worn in a while. Mariah donated some clothes, a few pairs of shoes, just some stuff that, like, for me, I look at it like, have I used it in the last 6 months? Am I going to use it in the next 6 months? And that's my rule. Mariah, I think, she goes by a little bit different of a rule. Maybe it's like 1 year for her. I haven't really asked her what her rule is.
Yeah.
But I know that she has her own way of kind of letting go of stuff. But yeah, I mean, automatically I'm like, oh, this is a great opportunity for Lexi to have a packing party. And it truly is, especially if your family's on board with this and they want to support you. Like, it can actually be a really fun thing, just kind of packing everything up and pulling stuff out as you need it. And then you said you're going to move in the next year. So maybe you do that packing party, 60 days before you move, and figure out what you're actually using, and then decide what you want to do with the rest.
Right.
I'll tell you another thing Mariah and I did, which I wish we didn't, is we just brought all of our furniture with us. So the way that Mariah and I got our apartment here in Los Angeles is Josh was so kind to come out here and scout some places for us. And he would send me some emails, and Josh has really good taste in places, in dwelling units. So I totally trusted his judgment, and we do have an awesome place. But once we picked it out, we were like, oh, okay, great. Looks like 2 couches can fit there, but we really didn't. Like, I didn't have you measure the room. I didn't look at the floor plan.
Yeah. And
we brought both couches in. I was like, this is stupid. Like, this doesn't work. It doesn't fit, and it was really clunky. And long story short, I ended up getting rid of one of the couches, just selling on Craigslist for $100 to $200.
So I think that's a good point. So planning the move, because you were deliberate about the move for sure, but being more deliberate about the space in which you're getting ready to occupy?
Right.
That's another great question that wasn't on my list of 6 questions here, but like, well, maybe it's sort of there, right?
Can you afford it? I mean, can you afford the space?
Right.
For your stuff.
And you don't have the space here, and so instead, can you afford it becomes cluttered accidentally, right? The things that worked in one house may not work in another house. I think back to our documentary and the architect Frank when he said, I don't ask people what if they want a living room or dining room or whatever. I ask people how they live their lives and try to build a house around their lives. Too often, I think what we try to do is try to cram an old life. We try to cram our past self into our future homes, and that becomes a problem.
Yeah, so I would encourage you, Lexi, to just really don't make a decision on what you're going to do with your stuff until you have your place picked out in Portland or in Seattle, and then at that point, use discernment to see what you will need and what you won't need. Here's the other thing too, is going back to that question of can you afford it? Can you afford to buy a new couch? Or can you afford to buy a new dining room table? Whatever these big items that you're looking at, if it's within your budget to purchase a new one when you get to the city, and you donate the old one or sell the old one, that's okay. Mariah and I, we didn't really have it in our budget to buy a new couch, so I tried to cram the second couch into our apartment, and it didn't work.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be perspectival on your part, Lexi, and with your family on what does your family need? What does it really like to do? Like Mariah and I, we really love to have game nights. Having 2 couches, it was awesome to have 2 couches for game nights. You know what? We're going to have to find out a different solution, and we have found out a different solution for game nights. We have stools that we can sit on. We've got just some other arrangements in our living room that totally accommodate for our lifestyle. Yeah. So you can still live the same lifestyle when you move to Portland, when you move to Seattle, but you definitely, not definitely, but you might not need all the same items that you have in your life right now to continue living the same type of life you want to live.
I can tell you with the move recently, Ryan, and I knew this intellectually, but really was able to understand it emotionally or viscerally with this last moving to Los Angeles, because we've been minimalists for nearly a decade now. I mean, I kind of started this whole thing back on my own journey back in 2009, and it's 2018 now. Yeah. And so it's approaching a decade at this point, and we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but sometimes we have to relearn some lessons, or sometimes they've just become part of our everyday lives, so we sort of forget the lesson that we learned, even though it's been implemented into our lives. And so I realized that the move is the time that you are truly, it's the one time you're forced to confront all of your stuff. Mm-hmm. So if someone else is listening to this, the only other way to do that is like to pretend you're moving, like Ryan did with his packing party back in the day, where you boxed up everything, pretended you were moving even though you weren't, because you literally have to deal with everything, because you're not going to be in that old space anymore. You can't just leave your stuff behind and say, peace, I'm out. Someone else can deal with this, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess you can if you're a bad person, but you're not. You're a good person, Lexi, and so you want to figure out, what am I going to do with the stuff? A few rules that you know well if you're a longtime listener of our podcast. The first one is the 90-90 rule. Now, we use this in my household all the time. Used it the other day on a pot or pan that was under our stove, and we've used it on a few other things too, where I'm like, nope, haven't used this in the last 90 days, but I might use it in the next 90 days. Let's see. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And we have a donation bag, and we just put it in the donation bag near the door. And then once a month, we make Ella drop off the stuff, and she donates. And we obviously take her down there. I don't want her walking through Hollywood, West Hollywood, trying to donate some stuff at the Goodwill.
Right. Attach a trailer to her tricycle. And,
yeah, that's right. She doesn't have a tricycle anymore. She's got a bike, man.
Oh, that's right.
She's got a 2-wheeler. That's right. Just put all the stuff in her backpack, make her ride down La Cienega or something. But no, so 90-90 rule is important for me and for my family. Have we used this in the last 90 days? Are we going to use this in the next 90 days? And if not, we give ourselves permission to let go. I know I often say, well, I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule. I generally don't have an exception to that rule myself. I'm sure if that rule doesn't work for you, then you figure out the time frame that does work for you. Also, the just-in-case rule. Man, I cleaned out my junk drawer the other day, and it was like, I I'm holding on to some stuff in here just in case. I was holding on for just for when, but it became apparent to me like, nope, not going to use that, not going to use that. My junk drawer is once again pristine, and I feel a sense of
like
calm.
The most organized junk drawer I've ever seen.
Yes,
you actually have a junk drawer.
Right. Just an empty drawer.
Right.
It's a metaphor. No, I actually embrace the junk drawer. In our home, we do have one junk drawer, and I embrace having that junk drawer there, but I also have to catch myself and say, like I was keeping some things here just in case. So the rule is you can replace anything you're holding on to just in case for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes from wherever you are. Doesn't just work in Los Angeles. That worked for us way out in the middle of nowhere, Montana, when we were living in that cabin on the side of a mountain. So you know what? It'll probably work for you as well. The cool news with that rule is you don't ever end up using it. Like, we've used it 5 times between the two of us in the last 6 or 7 years, I think. Yeah. And so those 2 rules really helped me out. Another thing that I would do different going forward, I would donate all my cleaning supplies if I'm moving to a new city. That seemed like half the stuff I packed up. Now, granted, I'm crazy OCD, and Ryan's always like, just mess with me. Like, he'll text me because I have in the calendar, like, clean the house, right? Like, I put it on my calendar, and I have a shared calendar with Ryan. So Ryan like he'll text me like, enjoy cleaning your house. And I think he means it literally, because he knows that it's like cathartic for me to like scrub the toilets or something. Actually, scrubbing the toilets I don't enjoy, but I like ironing and doing the floors or whatever. Yeah. Anyway,
I wish I loved doing that stuff. I love it when it's done.
Right. Well, I don't think I love it. I enjoy the process. What you're saying is you wish you enjoyed it. I also like listening to podcasts a lot, so it's an excuse for me to like put on a podcast. I'm listening to like Sam Harris or Joe Rogan or someone like that, and I can just put on a podcast and like and just get in the zone and start doing laundry or whatever. Yeah. But the one thing I had noticed when I was unpacking, I had boxes and boxes and boxes of cleaning supplies.
Wow, dude, that's wild.
And if I'm moving to a new city, I can repurchase those things. But here's the thing. Like, I had a lot of cleaning supplies. I'm like, I wasn't using that in the last 90 days. And for some reason, I wasn't looking at my cleaning supplies as 90-90 rule things. And I had a bunch of cleaning supplies I wasn't using, even though like I could have used them. And it allowed me to bring things back in when I moved into this new place a lot more deliberately. And I have far fewer cleaning supplies, even though I clean the same amount now, right?
Yeah.
And it just took up way too many boxes of stuff. Also with this new home that Bex and I and Ella and I, all 3 of us are in now, it took a long time to do this, and it was a bit frustrating, but I learned from that frustration. We slowly repopulated this new home. It wasn't about, all right, how can we quickly fill this space to make it feel like home? I do want it to feel like home, and it's important to me to have, especially the last few years, we've traveled so much, and like, because of my health difficulties, we've bounced around from different houses that I was chemically sensitive to, and man, that was so difficult for me. And you know this. I just felt like I felt a sense of despair because I felt like I didn't have a place to call home. And so getting out here, my knee-jerk reaction was, how can I hurry up and make this place feel like home? And the reaction, remember in Everything That Remains, the scene in our documentary too, like everything is crumbling down around me. The line is, but even while Rome is burning, there's somehow time for shopping at IKEA. And I didn't want to repeat that, right? Even though Rome wasn't burning this time around, life was good, and I'm feeling really good right now. I'm feeling better than I have in the last 5 years probably right now. But it's taken this last month to really... It's this new beginning. It really is a new beginning for me. And Ryan, I didn't want to just take that IKEA moment and say, all right, let's go out and hurry up, get everything and fill this place up so I am complete. Right. I'm not complete because my house is furnished or whatever. And so we very slowly, you can go back and listen to our decorations episode. It was episode 119. And Ryan and I talked about like sort of putting stuff into our homes very intentionally, decorating with intention, whether that's art or other things that bring us joy. But I slowly populated my new home with the new me. And so Lexi, I think what she can do is, what does the new you look like? Yeah. It probably doesn't look like the old you.
Yeah. What would happen if you sold everything?
Yeah.
And you just brought a suitcase each? How would you feel? How would you start all over again with your stuff?
Yes.
And that's if it's something she and her family can afford to do, like that is a great approach. I feel. Especially because moving everything across the country, it costs
a lot of money.
I forget how much I paid, but it's like, I want to say it's going to be from $2,000 to $5,000.
And imagine if you have a family of 4 or 5, though.
Yeah, and I moved from Missoula, Montana. I think it was like $2,000 basically to get all my stuff moved. From Cincinnati, it's going to be a lot more than that. I know Podcast Sean was looking into it, and it wasn't cheap. It was not cheap.
Yeah, and so thinking about that with all of these additional costs, and to hold on to stuff that you otherwise want to get rid of anyway. So get rid of it now, so you don't have to move it across the country. And I'll tell you this, for the first time in a long time, I finally feel at home. I've realized that this past week, man. Like, and part of that does, and so I'm not against stuff. It's about having the right stuff, the appropriate stuff, having the things close to me, but not having the attachment to those things either. I'm willing to get rid of any of the stuff in my house if it stops serving a purpose or bringing me joy. I'm going to continue questioning it, but I do want a base level of comfort. I do believe that too much comfort is a bad thing, but too much discomfort puts us into a tailspin of despair. So we want to find the balance. What's the base level of comfort? So I have that right now. And by the way, I'm going to do, I just figured this out yesterday. I'm going to do a house tour of my house on our Instagram account. We're at The Minimalists. I'm going to do this on May 11th, but it's at 9 a.m. Pacific time. But it is only going to be up there for 24 hours. That's the beautiful thing about the ephemerality of the Instagram Live, is it posts for 24 hours. I'll just do a video, answer some questions, but then it will be gone. So if you want to check that out, you can do so on May 11th. That is at 9 a.m. Pacific time live. If you want to ask me some questions when I'm doing this, we're at The Minimalists on Instagram. And the last thing that I have to say here is one thing that I did that helped me out a lot. I didn't like LA the first time I came out here.
Yeah.
I didn't like it the second time I came out here. I didn't like it the third time I came out here. But we were here for different media engagements or different things. But the problem wasn't LA, it was me, and I hadn't found the right pockets to explore yet and that would feel like home, right?
Yeah.
And because Los Angeles specifically, but any city you're going to, it's about finding the right pockets. Los Angeles isn't one big city. It's 88 smaller cities, right? So whether you're in Venice or West Hollywood or Boyle Heights or Pasadena, you're going to have a different feel. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do before you move to a place, why not go out there for a week or 2 weeks and spend some time with your family there? What neighborhoods resonate with you? Because if you're moving to Dayton, Ohio, you're going to have a different experience if you're in Piqua than if you are in Middletown, or if you're in the Oregon District, downtown Dayton, or if you're in St. Anne's Hill, or if you're in Wright Dunbar. Like, you have these neighborhoods in Dayton that are going to feel different. And what is appropriate for someone else may not be appropriate for you. And so figuring out, exploring it, maybe spending some time there and thinking about it, because starting anew also means you want to start from the best position possible. I think about runners when they're running a race, you know, in the Olympics or whatever. Like, they don't just start off willy-nilly like, oh, I'm just standing here. No, they're in the position that puts them in the best position to win the race, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's how, Lexi, you and your family want to start off here. I'd like to give you a couple things here, Lexi. One is that 6 questions that I mentioned. It's on our website. If you go to theminimalists.com/Q, you can find that. We'll also put a link to that in the show notes. But Sean, if you could reach out to Lexi and send her a copy of our book, Everything That Remains. The audiobook version, if she likes our podcast, she'll definitely like the audiobook version of it. Or if you want the book version or the ebook version, we'd be happy to send you one of those as well. A couple things covered in that book. Ryan, when I moved to a smaller apartment, I was downsizing. I wrote about that experience in that book in the 8th chapter. And then in the last chapter of the book, we wrote about our experience of moving out to Montana and then eventually into Missoula in a totally different circumstance and making that a home as well.
Talk about a new beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had so many new beginnings over the last few years. And a new beginning doesn't mean it's the last new beginning. It's just one of many new beginnings.
Yeah. I didn't realize. I mean, I get that's why we moved out to Montana. It was to kind of have a new beginning. But I didn't realize how moving to a different city, like how much of a new beginning it was. Because like I literally got to rebuild my friends, the hobbies that I had, the interests that I had. So I think Lexi and her family are going to have an awesome new beginning out in the Pacific Northwest. And good luck, Lexi. Congrats on the move. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so maybe a final question to ask yourself here, Lexi, is what does my future self look like? What do I want my future self to look like? And Ryan, you did a whole lot of that exploration when we moved out to Missoula. So we moved to that cabin in 2012 for 4 months, but then in January 2013, we moved out to Missoula, and you were in plays, you were with all these new friends, you found new establishments and new habits and new routines, and it became a different life than your life in Dayton. Even though you're the same person, you became a better version of yourself. Yeah. And that was through the experience of the new place.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was forced into becoming a new person. And, I could have made the same friends and had the same habits. And I was doing really well in Dayton. I mean, changing those habits. But when you move to a new place, like I have to seek out the bad habits. So for me, it was like, it put me in a situation where like I had to seek out new friends and really be deliberate with the kinds of people I wanted to hang out with. And it was great. I'm really glad we did it.
Am I going to seek out good habits or bad habits? Yeah. Is another good question for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Lexi, I hope you enjoyed that copy of Everything That Remains and those 6 questions. Maybe print it out like I have it printed out here and put it up on your fridge. Ask those questions repeatedly. I think you'll find a lot of value in that. All right, our next question is from Mary in Chicago.
I have a question for Joshua. You had mentioned that you lost 80 pounds, and I was wondering if that weight loss had stemmed from an attempt to apply minimalism to a different aspect of your life, like dieting. I'd like to just hear more about that weight loss journey from beginning to end. What triggered the weight loss? How much did your lifestyle change? How do you maintain your diet? I'm asking because I've applied minimalism to my once cluttered condo, and now I'd like to apply it to different aspects of my life, like dieting, and I was wondering if that had anything to do with minimalism.
So let's maybe not call it minimalism to start, Mary. Let's just call it intentionalism for a moment, right? Because that word minimalism often connotes the thought of just getting rid of possessions. But in our first book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life, we really broke it down beyond the stuff. So living the meaningful life was like, what do you do after the stuff? And I think the beginning of a new beginning for me was regaining control of my health. That, in fact, in the book, that's the first of the 5 values that we talk about. So let's not talk about dieting either. Let's talk about health. That's so much more important and long-lasting and ever-reaching. And what I mean by that is it reaches out. When our health is improved, then it reaches into all the corners of our the other corners of our life. My creativity improves. My friendships improve. And I think the opposite is also true. When my health declines, which I experienced a few years ago, it hurt every other area of my life, right?
Absolutely.
And so, Ryan, you were at the top of the show. You were talking about the blood tests and some of the changes that you made, and I can talk about. I lost 80 pounds at one point, and have kept off the weight, obviously. But I haven't been focused on keeping off the weight. I've been more focused on living more deliberately and focusing on my health, not keeping off the weight. Keeping off the weight is a byproduct.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what I've been focusing on. So, I used to be focused on how much I weighed. It's like so much. That's like that's like the worst thing to focus on. Right,
because you can cut off your leg and lose 70 pounds.
Right, it's really easy to lose weight if you look at it that way. No, I had to radically simplify my diet. I mean, I already did that with cutting out a lot of sweets. Like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Like, for all intents and purposes, like I had a great diet. But it wasn't great enough, or maybe it was a good diet.
It was good, but it wasn't
great. It was good, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
And to make it great, I had to simplify it. So I just cut out. Actually, it's not about what I cut out. What I bring into my body now, it's meat and vegetables. Like, that's pretty much it.
Yes.
Any processed stuff, any sugars, like I try to keep that stuff out of my body as much as possible. I am not perfect. I totally had a bite of chocolate cake 3 days ago. But
Fraud.
I know, right? But the thing is that yes, like it was just one bite. So I've also drastically simplified the amount of garbage that I put into my body.
Yeah.
I have really I want to sit here and be like, oh man, I've lost 20 pounds and like I'm looking good and I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you look better than you have in years, man.
But it's
your
really
face is thinner. You look more energetic. Our interactions, I feel, are more meaningful because of it. You feel like a new version of yourself.
I absolutely do. But it's not the weight though. It is the feeling I have.
Yes.
That is what I really appreciate about it. Because honestly, like if I gained 20 pounds and felt like this, I'd be okay with it.
Right.
Although I don't know if I would be okay with gaining 20, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, it depends on what the 20 pounds is too, right?
I'd have to look at some. Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you were entering some bodybuilding competition or something, I mean, you're getting a little. No, actually, you're not getting old for that. Bodybuilders tend to, they go well into their 40s and 50s.
Yeah. That's not what I'm trying to do, but
no.
But yes, like by simplifying your diet, and it's not really about like putting in these strict rules as much as it is like just following a consistent, great meal plan or a nutritional plan. I say nutritional plan because that's exactly what was instituted after the blood test. It was like, all right, here are the things you need to eat. Here are the things you need to avoid. Now, it's easier for me to fast than it is to diet. So, like, I'm allowed to eat quinoa. I'm allowed to eat, brown rice, like some slow burning carbs. Mm-hmm. But I tend to stay away from those things because it just makes me want more simple carbs.
Yeah.
I was very, very upset when I learned about everything I had to cut out.
Right. Well, and the reason being is early on, when we were having this conversation, you said, I looked at it and had the delicious bread or the delicious potatoes on the plate. And the way I reframed that, because I used to think the same exact way, is I reframed it to like, oh, I can't have the harmful bread anymore.
Right.
As opposed to, because saying delicious means, well, I'm giving up something.
Well, I really did do a good job of like having these, it's not even a cheat day. It'd be like a cheat meal. Like I never would have a whole day where I'm like, all right, today I'm just going to like totally splurge and not count the calories. It would just be, I felt like I was doing a good job with moderation when it came to unhealthy foods.
Yeah.
And because, dude, I'm not going to recommend that unless you're allergic to dairy, I would never recommend someone go their entire life without ice cream.
Right.
Like, so people should have ice cream and live a little bit every once in a while.
Right.
And I thought I had a really good balance of that. And learning that even that balance that I had because of my genetic predisposition, I was really angry. Like, man, I can't even have like a little bit. And I guess I could, like, it would have to be far, far less. But I feel so much better now following this simplified diet that I really don't want to go back to having those cheat meals. Now I'll have cheat bites. It's like when a cop has to, they taste the drug.
Only in movies, but yeah. Here, let me try this anthrax real quick.
Yeah, let me see if this is cocaine. Uh-oh.
Nope.
Uh-oh, that was Molly. Oh my God.
So I can tell you there were a few things that I did. I think it was in the same vein as Ryan here, but I had two separate categories. I knew there were some things I needed to eliminate altogether. Mm-hmm. Soy I'm allergic to, so I can't have soy. If soy is in something, it makes me break out really bad, and it has negative effects.
It's easy to give up when you're allergic to it.
Right. And then I have sensitivities to dairy. I'm not allergic, but I have sensitivities to dairy and gluten. Pretty bad sensitivities. Milk makes me break out like crazy. Mm-hmm. So does cheese, but it messes with my stomach a little bit.
So easy for you to stay away from ice cream.
Yeah. Yep. Well, dairy ice cream. Yeah.
Right.
But there are plenty of other sugary treats that I can have. Even if I go down the Salt and Straw or whatever, they have
like some of the best vegan ice cream.
They do.
Yeah.
But even then, so I'll get to the next. So those are the things that I've eliminated, right? Mm-hmm. Gluten, soy, dairy. And dairy.
Yeah.
There could be trace amounts in something that I don't know about, and it will still just totally mess with my stomach or my skin. I notice, I'm like, oh, like they didn't tell me there was soy in that, or it wasn't on the label or whatever. And then speaking of labels, there's another category for me. There are things that I avoid. It means I go out of my way to make sure I don't bring these in. If they do come in, it's not going to be the end of the world, but I avoid them at pretty much all costs. So processed foods, sugar, anything with a label on it, like that to me is like that falls under the processed foods or the packaged foods most of the time. Now, of course, you can buy a pack of raw almonds and it will have a label on it as well. So it's just a good guideline for me. Like, oh, if this has a label, it's probably something I need to avoid. Doesn't mean I can't ever take it in my life, but I should avoid this unless I really need to eat something.
So are these rules? Are these the rules that you implemented when you lost the weight?
Yes.
So talk to the audience about, I guess, how long did it take you to lose the weight? Were you focused on the weight?
Yeah. No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't know I lost weight for a long time, because when you have to live with it every day. So I've lost weight twice in my life. Once when I was a teenager. You remember this? So I was literally the fattest kid in our school. When you and I met in 5th grade, I was the fattest kid in our school, and then I just got fatter after we met because you were a bad influence on me, and I was a bad influence on you. We were just shoving double cheeseburgers in each other's faces all the time. And but in high school, I realized that I was attracted to the opposite sex, and I should probably lose some weight if I wanted them to be attracted to me as well. And so I did it a very unhealthy way in high school. I stopped eating.
I didn't realize that.
I wouldn't say I was anorexic per se. I ate one meal a day, but I certainly...
Oh, wow, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
It was junk food, basically, because I didn't know what...
Like, I'm going to have one double Whopper. Yeah, one double Whopper meal.
Yeah, I was radical calorie restriction, but I wasn't getting the nutrients I needed. So I was sick all the time. I had colds. My immune system sucked. But I lost a bunch of weight. And I knew that I'd lost a bunch of weight because I remember one year, especially after the summer that I lost a bunch of weight, I came into school the following year, and someone saw me in the bathroom and said, "Hey, do you know Josh Milburn?" I'm like, "Yep." Yeah. And he's like, you look like he has a skinny brother or something. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I had lost that much weight.
Wow. Well, I remember, dude, we moved back to Lebanon my freshman year. It was like, I don't know, a month or so before high school started.
Yeah.
And you came to my door, and you were knocking on my door, and I was like, who is it? I didn't even recognize you.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen you for... Because I had lived in a different city for one school year, and it had been at least like 6-7 months since I had seen you. In fact, because I saw you once when I was living in that different school district,
right?
And you were just as big.
Yeah.
So like I didn't, it never even occurred to me that you were losing weight. But I remember you showing up, and I was like, who the heck is this kid standing outside my door?
Yeah, I lost most of that weight from the end of after 8th grade it finished. So beginning of. Right before freshman year started, and then throughout freshman year of high school. But then, of course, I left, and I just gained it all back. Yeah. And by my early to mid-20s, I was 240 pounds again. And but I felt like crap too. And I didn't really understand what was healthful and what was making me feel ill. And it took a lot of sort of process of elimination. And they have these things called elimination diets now. I sort of created my own. And so I learned that I was allergic to soy and to gluten and to dairy, so I got rid of that. But then also the sugars and the packaged or processed foods, I eliminated that. I avoided those things at whenever I could. I mean, to me, and then also the simple carbs. I avoid simple carbs as well. The exception that I make is for white rice, although I've been avoiding white rice recently because I had some higher arsenic levels when I did the heavy metals testing last year. And so...
white rice has a little arsenic in it.
Yeah, quite a bit of arsenic, yeah.
So, like the arsenic in rice, the mercury in fish.
Yes.
This is all caused by our damage that we've done to the environment.
I know the mercury.
Is that correct?
I know the mercury is. I don't know about the arsenic. I assume maybe it is. Yeah. But we plant where most of the rices planted throughout the world are in is in soil that is filled with arsenic, and thus it leaches in or grows into the rice when it grows.
I thought we would just build up a tolerance to arsenic from eating such a little bit of arsenic. Turns out it kills you.
Also in the movies, Ryan's over there like. Cop Ryan is like trying Molly and taking a little bit of arsenic.
It's building up tolerances.
Is this cocaine? Nope, it's arsenic. No, and so I realized I had a little bit too much of that. So I avoid simple carbs, and I feel better as a result. But here's the thing: it's not about what I avoid. It's more now, and Ryan, you already alluded to this. It's about what do I put into my body. I eat mostly plant-based diet. Fresh vegetables, but then also meat as well. And I know for me, and it's interesting, we're going to have Rich Roll on the podcast next week, who's a vegan. He's able to live a vegan lifestyle that works really well for him. My diet is mostly plant-based, but I started eating meat as medicine 2 years ago, and my health has radically improved as a result. And very few other things in my diet have actually nothing else in my diet has changed. Other than the removal of fish because of my mercury stuff, but I eat meat instead of fish now. I was eating fish before, and so bringing meat into my diet and treating it as medicine, grass-fed, non-factory farm meat is an important way for me to not just get the protein, but get the nutrients that I need to make me feel like the best version of myself.
When did you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I lost 80 pounds?
I didn't know until I think it was because you didn't really, maybe you said something to me. I don't remember you saying something to me, but literally that kid in the bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah, I think his name was Sean. We were at Lebanon High School in Lebanon, Ohio, and he said, and I'm like, I knew I had lost some weight.
But you didn't realize you were unrecognizable.
I didn't realize how much weight I had lost because and for years I still struggle with it. I was still the fat kid in the mirror. I'm not anymore, but I was for many years, and I think that's partially why I gained it back and didn't realize I was gaining it back.
Yeah.
Because
it happens so slowly.
Yeah. You're with yourself every day, so you don't realize when you're losing or when you're gaining necessarily.
Right.
But if you have the habit set up, then you're setting yourself up for success. So a few things to talk about here. When we talk about the 5 values that are in Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life, Ryan, it's really about turning those values into habits. So health, relationships, passion or creativity, and then growth and contribution. Those are the 5, and it's about turning those into good habits. So Sean, here's something pithy for you. I know we're not looking for minimal maxims yet, but the good life is birthed from great habits. And I know a couple weeks ago, Ryan, we were talking about habits versus routines. And for me in my own life, the way I define these two things is I used to have a bunch of routines that were decent routines that aided my life, but routines are shoulds. Habits happen because they're musts. So a routine in my life could easily get disrupted by a glowing screen or by another emergency. I put that in quotes that weren't real emergencies, right? Putting a fire out, so to speak, because new emergencies are always around the corner. But I've developed some habits in my life now that won't be interrupted by these so-called emergencies because I won't let them. They're musts. They must happen. In a way, my habits are my daily emergencies. It's an emergency. I must do this. So a few things that I've done recently, especially since we're getting back into a routine of daily life outside of touring, and I feel better than I have in a long time because of it. I feel like my creativity is rocketing, it's exploding, but also I'm taking my old habits and making them new habits. So talk about new beginnings here, Ryan. Some of my old habits. So every morning I like to write and read and exercise, right? Well, I've turned them into new habits in the way that I determined that, like, let's take that reading and move it to nighttime, right before bed. That'll allow me to read more fiction. It's better to read fiction at night because it puts you in a more dreamlike state, and the reading of fiction allows you to, it aids REM sleep, right? And so I move most of my reading to nighttime now, the hour before bed. And I then just focus first thing in the morning on writing for at least 2 hours, right? Did that this morning. Bex was still in bed, and I got up at around 5:50 and wrote. And then by the time she was awake, it was 2 hours later, and like we had our morning together before a quick morning before before she dropped me off here to record this podcast. So writing, I've made that new, even though it's an old habit. And then I exercised as well this morning. I did my stretch at my physical therapy, but also my 18-minute exercise routine, which we could put a link to that in the show notes as well, Sean. So I exercise for minimum 18 minutes a day. If I exercise more than that, great. Like we're gonna go to Runyon Canyon later today. More exercise, it's a bonus. But I've already built in that habit. I've made it my morning emergency, right? Man. But then I also have some new habits that I'm trying out, and not all of these will stick, right? They might not. And some of these, they might seem like big habits, like the writing for 2 hours. That's a big commitment. Exercising, 18 minutes. Everyone has 18 minutes. Come on, right?
Sure.
But some new habits for me are just 30 seconds. Like one is every morning I get up, the first thing I'm doing right now is I have a full glass of water with a bunch of Himalayan sea salt in it. I was reading Aubrey Marcus's new book called Own the Day, Own Your Life. And he talks about doing that first thing in the morning because it helps rehydrate you, especially the Himalayan sea salt. Helps rehydrate more than just taking in the water. So a huge glass of water with a bunch, and it's very salty, like 3 grams of salt if you can tolerate it. That's a lot of salt, right? Think about 3 grams of salt. But I feel hydrated. I feel more awake when I do that, right? He also recommends light first thing in the morning and movement first thing in the morning.
Light first thing in the morning?
Yeah, like go out and see the sun for a few minutes,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
Reset your circadian rhythm. Or I have this little device that's called the human charger, because I often get up before the sun comes up, so I can use the human charger to expose me to light as well. It looks like an iPod. It goes right in your ears, and then you've used it while we're on tour.
Yeah,
right?
it's great.
It gives you a little energy boost. It resets your circadian rhythm as well. It also helps out with jet lag. But the other thing that I do is I've been trying out naps, but I also sometimes it's really hard for me to nap. So I've been trying meditation naps. Remember in Everything That Remains, we talked about Colin Wright. He has that 20 minutes of awesome.
Yeah.
20 minutes of awesome for him is like just sitting down and doing nothing. Is sort of his form of meditation, just letting the mind wander for 20 minutes. Well, for me, it's a combination of that and meditating, and napping. So it's hard for me to nap. So even if I can't nap, this is another thing I got from Aubrey Marcus recently.
You just like put your eye mask on and...
I put my eye mask on. I put in the Brain FM, which we've talked about on previous podcasts.
Yeah.
It's an app that syncs with your brain waves. That it puts music that is you can have. There's several different settings. Focus, energized. One is for napping, right?
Right.
So I put it on nap, and there's another one that's like for sleep.
So you put your headphones in, put your eye mask on.
Yep, and I just lay down on the bed, and I focus on the breath for at least 20 minutes. I'll actually set an alarm for 45 minutes, because if not, sometimes I will just like pass out. I'll accidentally sleep for 7 hours at 1 p.m. and that screws everything up. So I will do that, and it is like a new beginning for my afternoon. 20 minutes. Now studies show, the other thing he talked about in the book was we don't need, we often think like, well, if I can get 8 hours of sleep every night, and yeah, like in a perfect dream world, that's going to work. But we have commitments. We have all these other things. What we're really looking for are 30 to 35 sleep cycles a week. And sometimes that can be aided by naps. In fact, there's studies that show improved mental cognition, so improved cognitive activity, more so with naps than protracted or prolonged sleep, right?
Wow.
And so if you had a choice to sleep 7.5 hours and then take a half-hour nap later, that's going to be better for you than sleeping a full 8 hours. That extra half-hour nap later is going to improve your cognition for the afternoon. So
awesome.
It's a great thing to do. Just set your alarm for 45 minutes. I focus on the breath because here's the thing. Yesterday I did it and I couldn't fall asleep. It's okay. I still got I got what was very close to REM sleep. My mind's wandering and the Brain FM is going. I feel like I'm in a dream state, and afterward I did feel better.
What does your Oura ring what did it say?
I don't have the new Oura Ring, so it doesn't track the naps yet. I think the new app. So the ring that I have is called an Oura. It's a sleep tracking device, and I think the new version of the app will be able to track napping. Right now, it just says I'm inactive, which I am inactive when I'm.
But it doesn't let you know like what level of sleep you got to during your nap.
No, it doesn't. But I think the new version of that will.
Cool.
But
I'm just curious.
Yeah, it does. It just shows me as inactive. But I can tell you the other nice benefit. I didn't expect this with the little 20 to 45 minute nap is I have improved sleep at night as well. My nighttime sleep is better. It's like I'm not struggling as much to stay asleep. Awesome. Not every night, but I see a 10% improvement. And so we're talking about making these little 1% pivots, 2% pivots, but over time, you're in a totally different place when I'm just doing these small little victories. The salt water in the morning, the meditation naps. Another habit when Bex and I are in the same city, I make coffee for her in the morning, and we just have a quick conversation. And that gives me fodder for the podcast, but also gets my brain going for the day. It gives me like other things to write down. It gives me creative ideas for the writing that I'm working on for the next day. I also do midday stretches. I was teaching these to Sean recently, and I think I've shown you before, Ryan, but the one that I do, I will set my watch for every 22 minutes, and I'll just stand up here. We're here at the office now, and we have this new table. It's a standing table we're both standing at right now, but I'll just do these arm circles, do 40 of these, do 40 of them backwards, and do 25 of these elbow to elbow things, and it makes me it really loosens me up throughout the day and prevents me from just being stuck in one place. I was talking to someone about sitting versus standing. We have Kelly Starrett's book is Sitting is the New Smoking, and that's true, but also, like, if we're just standing like this all day, like you and I are standing up straight, knees locked, very straight, that's just as bad for us as sitting. And so the best position to work at is your next position. Meaning, sometimes you want to sit, sometimes you want to stand. You got Shauna who's leaning right now. You want to put your leg up sometimes like this, or you want to put your leg down, or sometimes I'll grab the mic here. I'll do like splits like this, right?
Right.
And put myself in this position and move around, create that movement throughout the day so I'm not just seated there. It allows me to be a newer version of myself.
Yeah, no, if you put your body in any position and leave it there for hours and hours, it's not a good thing.
It's bad for you.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So I do the midday stretches. And then one last thing that I do, it's become a new habit for me, and it's working really well so far. It is not a fail-safe, but I just say no thank you to myself. Like if I really want, like, I want to buy a candy bar. I'm really hungry right now. I'll go for the candy bar. Now, if someone else offers it to me, like yesterday, Bex, she had a piece of candy that she offered me a piece of candy, and I said, no, thank you. But I do that to myself now as well, because if someone else is offering it to me, it's easier for me to say no thanks. For some reason, it's harder for me to say no thanks to myself. So I will literally say it out loud. I'll say no thank you.
That's great.
And it's like this trigger for me to just say, I can walk away from this. I'm giving myself permission to walk away.
Yeah, man. I know when I start compromising with my diet, that's when it starts to go downhill really quick. Like, there's a gas station next to our place that had this awesome dark chocolate. Like, I mean, it was just, low carbs, tasted really good, like one of my favorites. And then they stopped carrying that percentage. Oh, yeah. And then like the next percentage up was like, just a lot more sugar in there.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'll just do it this one time. But I'm like, nah, if I do it this one time, I'm going to do it another time.
Right.
So I will tell myself no thank you.
Yeah.
And walk away from it and, feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that saying it out loud really, really helps me. The other thing I'll tell you, Mary, is the thing that has helped me out a lot, instead of running from something, have something to run toward. Like, what are you running to? Don't run from the weight that you currently have if you're trying to lose weight. Run toward a more healthy lifestyle.
That's such a good point, man, because it isn't like someone who, let's say, like an obese person, they're so focused on the weight.
Yes.
How can I lose the weight? How can I lose the weight? And the question is how can I live a better, healthier lifestyle?
Yeah.
Like, that's the question that we should be asking.
Yes.
For someone who wants to lose weight. Because, just going back to that being the worst way to look at your health.
Your health is so much more than a number that is displayed by a scale.
Yes.
Or your body fat percentage. Now, those are indicators. Just like the size of your waist is a good indicator of your health.
Mm-hmm.
The weight on the scale can be a good indicator of your health, but it's just an indicator. It does not equal health.
Yeah, my good friend Josh Wagner, who is, you would look at him and he's like, 40-something years old, looks like he's 30-something.
Yeah.
He's skinny, looks very healthy. Just found out that he is type 1 diabetic, and it just goes to show, like, if he was looking at just weight, then he would probably die very soon. Like, he has to look at his blood, he has to look at how he feels, so forth and so on. A skinny person can still be unhealthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's terms for that. We call it skinny fat, right?
Yeah.
People who are sort of like fat on the inside, health wise, but don't display the outward signs of like you and I displayed outward signs of being unhealthy, right? But not everyone is going to show that. I think he's a great example of that. Someone who looks like a paragon of health, but may not be. Especially when you look inside. I mean, my mom looked healthy. She was a smoker for her whole life. That's what she died from, and she looked healthy almost until the end, until she started going through chemo and radiation and stuff. She looked like she was healthy and thin, but there was other things going on inside. Mary's last question here was about how much did my lifestyle change? It changed entirely. I mean, because it wasn't just my lifestyle that changed, it was my focus that changed my lifestyle. Because my focus has changed, I started focusing on newer, better habits. I was able to create the good life out of those habits. So I think if you want your lifestyle to change, Mary, it's about what you focus on. You will become what you focus on. I'd love to send you a copy of our book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. Sean, if you could reach out to her and send her the audio book or the book or the ebook, whichever she would prefer. All right, Ryan, let's, we would love to hear what you all have to say. So if you have a comment or a tip about new beginnings or starting over or any of the other stuff that we talked about today, including advice for any of our callers, leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839. It's my favorite part of the show because at the end of the show, we air our favorite comments and tips from our listeners. And you can also send a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. If you don't want to call us and you just want to record it right there on your phone, you can send it over to that email address. Ryan, what time is it?
It is time for our lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
We are on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram @theminimalists. During our lightning round, this is where Ryan and I each do our best to answer each question with just a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We also put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. And now you can find all of our quotes in one place, minimalmaxims.com.
Our first lightning round question is from Becky. How do you build self-trust to let yourself take the plunge and create a new beginning?
Well, so if you've lost some sort of self-trust, I think it's fascinating because we can lose trust in other people, but I really like Becky's question here because, man, sometimes we can't even trust ourselves, right? And sometimes ourselves are the hardest person to trust because we know what's going on inside our brain, and our habits and our actions don't align with the person we want to be. So my pithy answer for you, Becky, is apologizing to yourself for your past is an effective way to accept and let go. And what I mean by that is sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you before you can move on. And to move on requires a certain amount of acceptance of the past. What is done is done. And to move on also, you have to be willing to let go of the past.
Amen. My pithy answer is starting over requires forgiving yourself and moving forward in a way that aligns with your values and beliefs. And now when I say moving forward, I mean taking massive actions that align with your values and beliefs. So Becky, it sounds like she has lost some trust for herself. So maybe her actions have not been in alignment with her values and beliefs. Now, Becky, it doesn't mean that you create this whole list of things for yourself to act on tomorrow. But at least pick one thing that you really want to implement into your life. This is how I started gaining trust in myself. It started out with diet, then it moved towards a workout routine, and other habits I wanted to incorporate into my life. I didn't do them all at once. I gained trust with myself with my diet. I remember for the longest time I was pescatarian, not because for any like virtuous reason.
Right.
I was pescatarian because when I was eating meat, like I went to Burger King and got Whoppers like at
You
least
associated meat with Burger King.
once or twice a month. Yeah. Well, what happened is I would allow myself to go to Five Guys, go to Burger King, and like just eat like crap, and I would make these exceptions. So again, it's easier for me to fast than it is to diet. So creating this rule around being a pescatarian, I wasn't able to go to Burger King and eat a Whopper.
Right.
Now, when I introduced meat back into my diet, dude, I haven't been to Burger King once since I've introduced meat back into my diet.
Because for you, in retrospect, the meat wasn't the problem. It was the source of the meat, the factory farmed, antibiotic filled meat, but then also what it was paired with.
Yeah, the French fries and the bun and the Coke and it was a recipe for a health disaster.
Right, and there's a healthful way to bring meat into your life if that's what works for you. And I'll be interested to talk to Rich Roll next week because he has a healthful way to bring veganism into his life, but he is not this prescriptivist. He's not part of the vegan mafia who wants to convert everyone at gunpoint, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He is someone who wants to educate people, and that's what we try to do, and educate people in a way that says, hey, what is appropriate for you? And I even know in my own relationship with Bex, she's basically a vegetarian, but isn't opposed to like trying meat from time to time because she knows what works best with her body. She's a nutritionist. She's been a dietitian for over a decade. She understands, and she's one of the best cooks I've ever met. So she can prepare meat really well too. But she realizes what works well for her. But I've also realized through a lot of trial and error what works well with me. Mm-hmm. And bringing meat back into my life was a way for me to test out. And it was disgusting at first. I remember I would like, okay, I'm gonna have 2 little tiny cubes of steak. Like these are my pills, basically. I have to down these pills really quickly.
Yeah. No, I think, Becky, you need to start with one thing that you can help build trust for yourself. So if it's diet, great. I mean, for me, well, dude, when I really started eating well, I lost a little bit of weight, and when you lose weight, your standards start to get higher. So it's like, I lose 5 or 10 pounds and I look in the mirror like, oh, wow, like I can tell I've lost a little bit of weight, but then I just realized where I need to lose weight everywhere else. Yeah. And it led to this thought process where I'm like, all right, dude, like I really do need to start working out. And I've been able to build this good habit with eating. Maybe I can build this good habit with working out. And dude, it has taken me, it took me years. 2 or 3 years to get into a good diet and a good workout routine. I don't think it needs to take everyone that long. No. But for me, it wasn't until 5 years ago when I really felt or 4 years ago, I felt confident in my habits when it came to diet and exercise. Yeah. And what I'll say is every time anyone who looks in the mirror and they say, I want to put this habit, I want to incorporate this habit into my life. And then they take these little steps, these little 1%, 2%, pivots every single day. And next thing they know, oh my goodness, like I've been able to put this habit into my life. Like just one habit is going to give you enough confidence to trust yourself to move on to the next habit. Yeah. And it's daunting to think I'm going to try to change everything overnight. Right. And so that's why people just throw their hands up and never start. Right. And for me, that's why I talked briefly. Well, and it's impossible to do that. Right. Like trying to change everything overnight. It's impossible. So there is a timeline between overnight and 3 years that it will take you to change habits. Yeah, and so because changing everything is possible overnight, people throw their hands up and they say, changing is impossible. Right. No, the change isn't impossible. It's incremental. Yeah. Ooh, that's pithy. That's good, man. Change isn't impossible. It's incremental. All right, Leo writes in, when you're moving to a new career, there's always fear of losing all the things you gained from the past career. Yeah, that's something we definitely had to face, right?
Totally.
How do you tell yourself that it's okay to not be in your comfort zone?
Well, so let me just answer that with a pithy answer real quick, and then actually I've got a couple here because he kind of asked two questions, right? Or had a statement and then a question, but they seem like almost two separate things for me. He talked about moving on to a new career and that fear that you have from losing what you've had in the past career, but then he also talks about like being in the comfort zone, right? And so my first pithy answer is we needn't let go of everything to move on. You know, it's funny to me, Ryan, when someone says, you guys didn't get rid of anything important. Well, that's sort of the point, right? Like, in fact, I brought with me all the important things from my past career. I developed a skill set. I had a talent that I was able to cultivate over the course of a dozen years in that career of leading people and teaching people and managing people and also running a business. I learned a lot. And those are all things I was able to tweeze out and bring forward without bringing the baggage of needing to meet our monthly sales goals and deadlines and 3 p.m. status updates and end of day reporting. Like, I didn't need to bring that baggage with me because I didn't find it valuable, but I was still able to move on without letting go of all the skills that can you imagine if I said, well, I'm just going to leave all the skills behind that I left? No, why would you do that?
Well, no, I think Leo, his fear is that he is going to lose all the things from his past career.
Right. And so,
and we're here to tell Leo, like, yeah, you are going to lose some things from your past career. Your status, you're going to lose the salary, you're going to lose, the job title, but you're not going to lose everything.
Right.
There are a lot of things you can still hold on to. You're exactly right, Josh.
And with respect to the comfort side of things, my other pithy answer here is a life of surplus comfort isn't a life well lived.
Amen, dude. That's a perfect lead into my pithy answer. Comfort is the place in which we grow and learn the least. So comfort, what that does is it makes, well, at least for me, it makes me very complacent. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm at a point in my life where I do want to grow. I do want to learn more. I love how our message has evolved over the last 8 years. I look forward to it evolving over the next 8 years.
Yeah. And it hasn't. And can you imagine if we were in the same place we were 8 years ago and just tried to keep saying the same thing? Like, no, we learn from what we've learned.
Right.
Ooh, Sean.
Yeah, that's a good pithy one too. But yeah, no, I think that Leo he can't afford to not be comfortable. So, or I'm sorry, he can't afford to be comfortable.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
He's at a point right now where he's unhappy, but he's scared to lose everything. He's built up. Well, A, Leo, you're not going to lose everything, and B, putting yourself in that discomfort zone is where you're gonna grow and learn the most. It makes me think about, like, I mean, that's with anything with life, even working out. Like, that's the whole process of the muscle rebuilding. You put your muscle in this, you're tearing small fibers, you're making yourself uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
that's so your body can build muscle on top of that muscle that you've damaged.
And you're understanding why you're making yourself uncomfortable, because the pain that you get, let's say you've worked out really, really hard and you're super sore the next day, Ryan, or 2 days later, or however long it takes. If you're really, really sore, you know why that discomfort is there, right, and you feel good about it. Mm-hmm. Now, if you woke up one day and you hadn't worked out and you felt that pain, that's a whole different story. You're going to the doctor saying, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe this terrible pain that I have."
There's a difference between pain and discomfort for sure.
Well, so know why you're making yourself uncomfortable is a good reason to do it. And so I think about that Jim Rohn quote, who said, he said that life begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
I love it.
And
it's true.
And I think the edge part is the important part there. We were talking about this earlier in the show, Ryan. If you go too far beyond the edge of your comfort zone, you're going to feel immense pain. It's going to be terrible. You're going to recoil and you're going to search for surplus comfort. But if you live there on the edge of your comfort zone, that is where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to become a new version of yourself.
Absolutely, man. I've got this essay by Seth. It's called Uncertainty is Not the Same Thing as Risk. And I'm really looking for a place to squeeze this into the podcast. I think this is a good place, though, because, when Leo talks about the fear of losing all the things he's gained, I think that it's a feeling of uncertainty.
Yeah, fear of risk.
The fear of what is he risking to lose. So here it is. Often, the most important work we do doesn't bring a guaranteed specific result. Usually, the result of any given action on our part is unknown. Uncertainty implies a range of possible outcomes. But a range of results, all uncertain, does not mean you're exposing yourself to risk. It merely means you're exposing yourself to an outcome you didn't have a chance to fall in love with in advance. A simple example. The typical high school student applying to a range of colleges has very little risk of getting in nowhere. Apply to enough schools that match what you have to offer, and the odds are high indeed you'll get in somewhere. Low risk, but a very high uncertainty about which college or colleges will say yes. That's not risky. That's uncertain. It takes fortitude to live with a future that's not clearly imagined, but it's no reason not to apply. Another example. If you speak to 100 people, it's uncertain which 40 will be impacted by what you say. But the risk that you will resonate with no one is small indeed. The question to ask every organization, manager, artist, or yourself is, are you hesitating because you're not sure the future will match your specific vision, or is there truly a project endangering risk here? A portfolio of uncertain outcomes is very different from a large risk. So to me, it's the reason why I think this goes well with Leo's question here is that he's not scared of what he's going to lose. He's scared of the outcome that's going to happen from taking this new leap or taking this new chance. And to me, like this essay is very comforting, because what this essay says is that if you've done the work, if you've done everything you can, it's okay to be uncertain, because you're really not risking that much as long as you've put the work in. So Leo, it sounds like he's put a ton of work into his old job. So he has the work ethic. He has, the habits built in this old job. This is something that he can totally translate to another job. Now, does he know the outcome? No, but that's okay because he has been putting the work in.
Yeah. I dig it. Yeah. So Leo, I think maybe it's time for you to take the risk, because maybe it's not a real risk at all. All right. We got one more question here. This question is from Ben. How do you deal with people who project their own fear and insecurities onto you when you start a new life? I usually ignore strangers, but what about close friends and family? Well, I've got a titillating answer for this one, but if you want to hear our answers to that question, you can listen to the postscript for this episode. Each week, we publish our postscript episode over at the Minimalists private podcast, which shows up as a separate feed in the same podcast app you're using right now to listen to this episode. The Minimalist private podcast is just for supporters of this podcast. That's why it's private, right? So if you want to support our show and keep this podcast 100% advertisement free, because advertisements suck, then head on over to theminimalists.com/support. In addition to our weekly postscript episodes, the Minimalist private podcast also includes other exclusives like our special Ask the Minimalists Anything episodes, plus unreleased recordings of all of our live events. We just put out the DC event this week. I'm looking forward to listening to that one because, well, it's the one event that I wasn't at. I was crazy sick with hand, foot, and mouth disease. And so I didn't want to get anyone else sick. Plus, I literally couldn't leave my hotel bed. So Ryan and Cal Newport, who you all know from Deep Work and So Good They Can't Ignore You. And then also Paul Johnson from Canyon City, who was on our Hobbies podcast. All three of them were at the DC event, but all of our past events that we've put up there as well. And we're putting up a bunch of future events. They Ask the Minimalist Anything, and then also the entire back catalog of past private episodes. You can find all the details over at theminimalists.com/support. Okay, now it's time for our added value portion of this show. This is where we each talk about something that has added value to our lives recently. Ryan, what has added value to your life?
Man, I just downloaded this album that you would not like, but I love it. It's it's Ashley Monroe. It's an album called Sparrow, and
I knew Ashley. She's done some songs with Matt Carney.
Yeah, she's a country singer, more kind of like a Dolly Parton type singer, but
I didn't realize that.
Also very bluesy.
Okay.
And this album Sparrow is like, I love it, dude. It's like I'm not a country fan. Like I love Johnny Cash and like some of the old country stuff.
Yeah, Cash seems more like Western to me. It was like before the two sort of intersected, right?
I mean, yeah, he kind of falls in like that Southern rock category, which to me Southern rock is kind of
country-ish.
It is country-ish.
Yeah.
But there are very few country stars I really enjoy listening to these days. And it's just because it's not my genre. Like in the country stars I do like, most country fanatics don't like the country stars that I like.
Yeah.
But Ashley Monroe, she just got this great, awesome voice, and then she just does this great job with the twang and the bluesy riffs, and it's a great album.
So she did the song "All I Need" with Matt Carney. He did this acoustic video version of it, and she was on there singing with him, and it was, yeah, I can attest. I haven't heard her music, but her voice is just unbelievable,
out of this world.
Yeah, it's really great. So I've got three things. We've got a movie, a thing, and an album for you here. Yesterday I went to go see A Quiet Place. It's under the horror genre, I guess you could call it, and it's slightly scary, especially for someone like Bex who gets really scared. She's like Ella. I mean, Ella and Bex are kind of the same person. Ella refuses to watch movies. She's almost 5. She'll be 5 in about a month, and she thinks all movies are synonymous with scary movies. She just like Frozen. We tried to get her to watch. She's like, I can't watch it. It's too scary for me. But Bex is she gets scared easily at movies. But there are parts that are certainly scary and they're meant to be scary. But it's not like it's John Krasinski.
Yes.
Yeah, you know him from The Office.
From The Office.
And Jack Ryan and all these other places. But very talented actor. He directed it. And
oh, wow, cool.
It's him and Emily Blunt and their 3 kids. And that's really it. It's only the 5 of them in the whole movie. But this isn't giving anything away. I won't give you any spoilers. But the premise of the movie is there is something out that is killing humans, and the only way you can avoid it is to be quiet. Like to be quiet all the time. You can't talk, you can't make loud noises, which to me sounds like paradise.
There's definitely a metaphor there.
Yeah, well, there were several metaphors there. Like I felt, but there's also, it's like hell on earth because everyone's being attacked by these sort of like monsters, for lack of a better term. I don't want to spoil anything, but we'll just say monsters vaguely, right? And it's hell on earth, but they found a way to create their own little heaven within hell. So that was the metaphor that really resonated with me, is like, look, I know there's chaos going on in your life right now. You're listening to this and you're doing the dishes, or you're at the gym, or you're driving to work, or you're in your cubicle. And I know sometimes it feels like hell, but you can create your own heaven within that hell. There's your own corner of heaven inside a vast hell. But it was such a great movie. It was so well done. Bex and I left there like, wow, I've never seen a movie like this. It was the reason that you put it under the horror genre, or you could put it under drama, is because it's genre defying art. It fits under all of the genres and none of them at the same time, and they did such a great job with that movie. So it's called A Quiet Place. It's out in theaters right now. The Thing that I'm not going to recommend, but I got value from it recently. So I need to buy new sheets recently, and so quite often I buy the really nice sheets because I want to make sure I've got really good sheets that are on my body because I'm sleeping there 8 hours a night. And you hear these commercials on other podcasts, and 17 other presidents have slept on these sheets, and I'm like, well, if there's presidential sweat on my sheets, I definitely want them. But no, like you hear these, and like people are spending. I've spent good chunks of money on good sheets. Like it makes sense to have a nice thing, but sometimes we also confuse cost with quality, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I went over to the store, like to Target, to buy some new. They have like a high-end sheet that I generally get that I liked and worked well for me. But like I went to the shelf and it was just all empty. It was completely empty. I was back to school or Valentine's Day or President's Day sale. I have no idea what it was, but they were all gone, right? And then the next one down, if those were the A+, then like the A-, those were all gone too for the queen size beds. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I just need something temporary right now that's going to work for me because my old ones are just tattered. They're done. I went and bought the cheapest sheets from Target that I could find.
Yeah.
Which is not like me because I know they're going to be cheap quality, or at least that's what I thought. They're some of the best sheets I've ever owned in my life.
Nice.
And I'm like, what have I been doing this whole time? I've been overspending on these supposedly nice sheets, and they've held up. I've waited several months to talk about these because I'm like, these are great, but are they going to hold up? I've washed them a bunch of times, and they are still great for me.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're great for you, I don't know. But the recommendation here isn't to buy cheap sheets from Target necessarily. It's that, hey, maybe the thing I think I'm splurging on, I don't actually have to. Maybe I'll get equivalent or even more value from not splurging.
Yeah, dude, you taught me to look at reviews before I buy stuff.
Yeah.
And that has saved me quite a bit of money, a lot. Because it's like, yeah, you see option, A+.
Right.
And that is, the best option because of all these features and, whatever. And then I look at the reviews and it's like, 3.5 stars for this product. And then I look at the, the substitute that's, costs half as much and it's got a 4.5-star review.
Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute. Like you realize really quickly there's sometimes a correlation between price and the value you get, but not necessarily. And so, yeah, check the reviews, but also check what is appropriate for you because my sheets may not be appropriate for you, or my sheets wouldn't be appropriate for Ryan. He has a king-size bed and I have a queen-size bed, and so it really wouldn't work out there, right? So, all right. Oh, one last thing. Because you're using these new sheets now, if you want a great sort of bedroom album to listen to, I swear to you, this is like the best love-making music I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
Artist named Black came out with an album last year, but it's spelled with a 6, so 6 L-A-C-K. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He's from Atlanta. He's like a R&B guy, but sort of like the new R&B. He has an album called Free Black, and it is like the best bedroom time music.
Nice.
You just like it makes me like, and I listen to all kinds of like other like romantic music in the bedroom. I'll put Sade on or Nina Simone, but like I was listening to this and it was like, and Bex was too. She's like, oh my God, this is a good album. And so yeah, you can check that out. We'll put a link to all of those in the show notes if you're looking for those as well. Where are my notes, Ryan? All right, yeah, it's time for Right Here, Right Now. We got a lot going on in the lives of the Minimalists, so let's try to dive into a few of these things. Speaking of my partner, Rebecca, and speaking of new beginnings, next month, so just right around the corner, about a week, she is starting her next class, the 23-day Priorities Reset in May. So it's a 23-day class, a daily video, some coaching, one-on-one coaching sessions with her, but then also some weekly live streams as well, plus a whole bunch of other course material. She's been a dietitian and a nutritionist for over a decade and worked at a university for the last decade as well, and helping people, working them through setting up new beginnings on their diet, exercise, and life habits in general. So if you need some help, she has only 30 seats in that class, so it will likely sell out. I know the other ones have as well, but if you're interested in that, you can find that over at her website. It's minimalwellness.com. Also, we have a video version of the podcast coming soon. I think that's why Ryan's wearing makeup right now. But you can find that. You can subscribe to it as well over at youtube.com/theminimalist. As soon as we have enough Patreon supporters, we're going to inject a video version of the podcast, so you'll be able to see this. We'll also do other video creations with that as well. Next week, we've got Rich Roll on the podcast. The following week, TK Coleman. We're going to talk about Rich Roll. We're going to talk about food and nutrition. And then with TK Coleman, we're going to talk about schooling and education and careers. And, I already mentioned this, but just I've got on the list here. I'm going to do a Instagram live tour of my house now that I'm feeling settled in and good. It's not complete or perfect, but my life will never be complete or perfect. So I think now is a good time as ever to do this. May 11th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. The video will be up for only 24 hours on Instagram. We're at the Minimalists on Instagram. And have you checked out our side project recently? It's called Minimalism Life. You can find that over at minimalism.life. I've got a new essay going up there next month called Consumerism is the Original Virtue Signaling. There's a lot of talk about virtue signaling these days, but I think we've been virtue signaling or maybe value signaling with a lot of the shiny objects that we purchase, trying to show off and impress other people. So I've got a longer essay over there, but there's a bunch of other writings, photos. You can follow on Instagram as well. It's just at Minimalism Life. A lot of beautiful photos there, curated by our friend Carl and Alberto, and we contribute to that as well. But you can find the website is www.minimalism.life. We're also working on a new documentary. So Ryan, we filmed a talk in a warehouse back in February, the talk we've given the last year in 50 different cities, finally captured that on video so that we could build the next documentary around that. Earlier this month, we were back in Dayton, Ohio, and going through sort of childhood memories, childhood homes. We were in an abandoned mall where we got to talk about consumerism and drive around a bit. We got some B-roll for that. We're headed out to Joshua Tree next weekend to do some interviews and some additional B-roll footage as well. Looking forward to sharing this documentary with you. We don't have a release date yet, but hopefully we'll have it wrapped up and be able to edit it this summer. And who knows, maybe we'll have it out and released to the world by the end of the year. It's called The Minimalists, Less Is Now. And you can get details and updates about that on our website if you're on our email list over at theminimalists.com. A bunch of new writings over at the website right now as well. There's an essay called Who Is This For? There's another essay that's coming out this weekend called Too Weak to Say I'm Sorry. And the 6 questions I mentioned earlier, plus a bunch of other new writings that we've been working on. If you want those to show up right there in your email inbox, along with any of the show notes that we always talk about, you can just go to theminimalists.com, enter your email address at the top. We'll send you any new writings, any new updates about the new documentary, and also any new show notes for the podcast that we release. And that's all I got right now, Ryan. You got anything else for us?
Finally, here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners.
Hi, it's Chris from Barrie, Ontario, Canada. And my comment is, if you guys are looking for a good news source that's unbiased, that isn't very full of clutter and garbage and junk, I would recommend a podcast called The World Next Week by the Council on Foreign Relations. And it's a very non-biased, great source of just information on what's going on in the world. And I just think it's a great resource, and it's very unbiased. And anyways, I just wanted to leave that little tidbit behind.
Hi, my name is Helen. I'm from Vista, California, and I wanted to respond to something I heard today about medals and trophies. I'm a runner, and I had collected 30 years of all kinds of medals and recently just got rid of all of them. I did donate to Medals to Medal. That was one of the resources that was given today. But I also found that teachers were very interested in them, trophies as well, because they like to give them out to kids, not necessarily for them to take home, just as a great job staying on task, keep this on your desk for a while, kind of rotating through the classroom. So my teachers that I knew took a ton of them, and I made several more into Christmas tree ornaments because I do still have some of those. And then a tip that I heard from somebody else for future is when I get a medal at another race, I'm going to take a picture of it and take a picture of myself with the medal, and then I'm going to give it away to somebody else. There's always families there cheering on, moms or dads, so maybe a kid who would enjoy it so they don't accumulate anymore for me.
Hi guys, Josh here from Pasco, Washington. Really enjoy your show. Here's a quick tip for students to prevent student debt. Leverage CLEP exams, that's CLEP, from College Board to fill prereqs and save time and money. You should start by looking up your institution's CLEP policy in the credit transfer section. Then go to the College Board website to buy CLEP exams your school will accept and find a testing center. Many public libraries and even YouTube offer free study materials for the various tests. As well, if you're active duty military, you're most likely eligible for free testing through Dante's funding.
All right, y'all. That's it for this episode. If you have a question for the Minimalists, give us a call, 406-219-7839. You can also email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. And if you leave here with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.